All right, McKahan here. We're going to talk about quick graphs of lines. Let's first review what we talked about in the last video using the slope-intercept form to graph a line. This is the y equals mx plus b. So remember we said that the m, which would be -3/2, that's our slope, that's our rise over run. And the b, which in our situation is 1, that would be our y-intercept. And we always start with the y-intercept. So I'm going to start on the y-axis at +1. And then from there, I'm going to count a rise of -3. That means go down 3. 1, 2, 3, and over 2. And then do it again. Down 1, 2, 3, over 2. And then you can connect those to make a straight line. In the next example, we're going to use standard form of the equation. So in standard form, that looks like this. I have ax plus by equals c. Notice that the x and the y are both on the same side of the equation. See how those are both on the same side. And then you have a constant over here on the right-hand side. All right, so if you ever see x and y on the same side, you can use this strategy. And we called it before in Algebra 1, you might have called it cover-up, or finding the x-intercepts or the x and y-intercepts. So in this form, to find the x-intercept, we're going to plug in 0 for y. Or a lot of times we just covered up the y part. So if I plug in 0 for the y, I get 4x plus 5 times 0 equals 20. And then the 5 times 0 just becomes 0. So that's why the cover-up works, because that's going to go away anyway. So we get 4x equals 20. Now we need to solve this. If I want to get x by itself, I just divide both sides by 4. And that gives me x equals 5. Now, think about it. I just got x equals 5. That tells me the x-intercept. So that means I'm going to plot 5 on the x-axis. So here's my x-axis. I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and put a dot there. Okay, so that's the whole point. That's the point of 5, 0. All right, now we're going to do the same thing, but for the y-intercept. So for the y-intercept, I'm going to plug in 0 for the x, or you could cover up the x part. So if I plug in 0 for x, I get 4 times 0 plus 5y equals 20. So you can see again, 4 times 0 is 0. That's why you can cover that up. And that leaves you with just 5y equals 20. So to solve for y, we just divide both sides by 5, and that gives me y equals 4. So again, I got y equals 4, so that's my y-intercept. That means I'm going to plot 4 on the y-axis. Here's my y-axis. I'm going to go to +4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and that's the point 0, 4. So I want you to understand when you're doing cover-up, you're plotting 2 separate points from those intercepts. Now you can just connect those. The third way we can graph is in the HK form, which is what you learned in Algebra 1. So the HK form looks like this: y equals m, and then x minus h plus k. So in our equation here, my m is 3. And then for h, remember that h is opposite of the number in parentheses. So here my h comma k, is going to be -4. It's -4 because in my equation it was +4 or +4. The k stays exactly the same, so my k is -5, so it's going to be -5 here. So what do we do with that? We're just going to plot that point, -4, -5, plot your hk. So I'm going to go left, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the point, -4, -5. And then from there, I'm going to count my slope. We said our slope was 3. Keep in mind that's a slope of 3 over 1. That means I have to count up 3, so from that point, 1, 2, 3 over 1. That would be my next point. And then I count up again, 1, 2, 3 over 1. And that's my line. So now that we've talked about how to graph them, let's talk about parallel and perpendicular lines. If lines are parallel, then their slopes are the same. And if the lines are perpendicular, their slopes are opposite reciprocals. Remember that opposite reciprocals means you're going to be changing the sign and you're going to flip the fraction too. So here's what I mean by that. If I have the original slope is 2/3, the opposite reciprocal of that would be negative 3 over 2. So notice the original one was positive, the opposite reciprocal would be negative, and I flip the signs. So let's do an example. So in this first example, I have y equals 3x plus 4 and y equals negative 1/3 x minus 2. We have to determine whether they're parallel or perpendicular. So notice both of these are in y equals mx plus b form. So here's my slope in the first one, here's my slope in the second one. So I have 3, and remember 3 is like 3 over 1, and then the second slope is negative 1 over 3. So this is just what we were talking about, opposite reciprocals. The fractions are flipped and they have opposite signs. So that means that they are perpendicular. On our next example, it's not quite that easy. Do you notice how that first equation is in standard form? So I can't really tell what the slope is just by looking at it. So we're going to rewrite this. So I want to get the y by itself. So I'm going to first subtract the 2x. We started doing this in class, but I know we had a little bit of trouble doing that, so I'm going to show you. Now over here, I do have 12 minus 2x. Those are not like terms, so don't combine them. That's not 10x. They stay separate. However, I'm going to put negative 2x first, and then plus 12. That's so I have mx plus b. And then I still have to divide everything by negative 4. That's so I get the y all by itself. So I get positive y, and then I'm going to reduce negative 2 divided by negative 4. That reduces to positive 1/2 x. If you're having trouble with that, use your calculator to help you reduce. And then 12 divided by negative 4 is negative 3. So now it's a lot easier to compare the slope. Here's the slope of this line, and then I'm going to circle the slope of the other line. Notice that they're both exactly the same, so that means that these lines are parallel. Next, we're going to review horizontal and vertical lines. Remember that x equals 2 is telling you that it's crossing the x-axis at 2. So I'm going to go to the x-axis right here. Ooh, I don't want to do that. I don't want you to think that's the line. X-axis is right here, and I'm going to go to positive 2 on the x-axis. So that's 1, 2. Now it has to cross there, and it has to be either horizontal or vertical. So the only way to draw that line is to go vertical through there. So this is a vertical line, and vertical lines always have the format x equals some number. Another way to help reason through that, any point on this line is going to have a x-coordinate of 2. So this is the coordinate 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, negative 4. This is the point 2, 0. This is the point 2, 3. And so all of these have the x-coordinate of 2. That's why it's always x equals some number. All right, graph y equals negative 3. This is telling you it crosses the y-axis at negative 3. So I'm going to go to, here's the y-axis. I'm going to go to negative 3. So that's down 1, 2, 3. and it has to cross here. It has to be either vertical or horizontal. The only way I can get that is horizontal. So y equals is always going to be a horizontal line, and that's always y equals some number. Again, the reason for that is because any point on this line is going to have a y coordinate of -3. So this is 0, -3. Over here, this would be -4, -3. This point would be 5, -3. All of those have a y coordinate of -3. Lastly, we're going to do a little word problem. And our class wants to purchase hot dogs and hamburgers for a picnic, and they gave us this equation. This is in standard form. Notice the x and y are on the same side. And the first thing we have to do is graph the equation. So let's find the intercepts. So the first thing we're going to do is plug in 0 for one of the variables. Let's start with, I'm going to plug in 0 for x. And so that leaves me with 2y equals 48. And then if I divide both sides by 2, I get y equals 24. That must mean this is the y-intercept, and I would plot 24 on the y-axis. Okay, let's do for the opposite variable. I'm going to plug in 0 for the y. So that's going to give me x equals 48, and that's my x-intercept. So I'm going to go over here on the x-axis and plot 48. Now I'm going to connect those 2 points. I'm going to use a nice line there. Okay. And there's my graph. Next, it says give one possible combination of hot dogs and hamburgers that your class can purchase. Well, guys, any point on this line is going to be one of the possible combinations. So we just have to pick one. Now, it looks like this would be a nice number, x equals 40, but I'm kind of having trouble seeing what the y value is. I can't tell if that's a 5 or a 4. So I'm going to use my equation that they gave me. Remember, they gave me x plus 2y equals 48. So if I know I want 40 hot dogs, and I want to figure out how many hamburgers, I'm going to plug in 40 and for x, and then solve for y. So let's subtract that 40. That leaves me with 2y equals 8. Divide both sides by 2, and we're getting y equals 4. All right, so it was 4, it wasn't 5. So that means I'm going to have 40 hot dogs and 4 hamburgers, and that's just one combination that works for that.